Welcome, everybody, to this live action free episode of Joker Reviews. For this very special episode, I have saved a fun, fast, colorful game that gives you a little bit of that dungeon crawl flavor, but the packaging promises that you can get all of these wonderful experiences in only 5 minutes. Let's see if the game can actually practice what it preaches, because today we're reviewing 5 Minute Dungeon. 5 Minute Dungeon is exactly what it promises. It is a dungeon crawl game that takes 5 minutes per stage. The entire game doesn't take 5 minutes. If you were to actually play it to its totality, it would be 25 minutes. But each individual boss, starting with the baby barbarian and moving on to the Grime Reaper, the Zola the Gorgon, a freaking dragon, and the Dungeon Master, each take 5 minutes based on your timer. So that brings you up to the 25 minutes. Right now I have this set up as a 4-player game, and I will get into a little bit of the details on how each of the turn works and what your objective is. So the objective of the game is to get to and defeat the boss in the 5 minutes that you have on your counter. You could use the 5 Minute Dungeon timer app that you can download onto your phone or your mobile device, but any timer will work as long as you have the ability to pause it and restart it. So you're actually playing in real time. There's no specific turn order that you have to play. Everybody's playing simultaneously and you're trying to get to this guy. So you can see here, this guy requires 2 swords, 2 arrows, 3 jump symbols to defeat. But before you can get to this guy, you have to get through all of these. He is going to have a stack of door cards right here that you have to flip over one at a time. And in those door cards are going to be some special cards, 2 per player in the game. These ones, which are event cards and mini bosses, these are the ones that really mess you up. But you're going to have to flip them over one at a time and simultaneously play cards in order to defeat each of the cards individually, and I'll get into how that works. So you have started your timer and you are about to flip over the first door. You flip over the first door card and you can see it is 2 guys, 1 bow, which is 2 guys pulling back the string of 1 bow. And you are required to play 2 arrows and 1 shield. So between all of the people that are playing the game currently, you need to be able to find 2 arrows, 1 shield. There's 1 and 1. And here's another arrow. So everybody kind of plays simultaneously, trying to beat the card as quickly as possible. Then you would immediately pull these off of the board. This would get pulled off as well. And you would flip over your next card. Your next card also requires shields and arrows. So you'd have, say, maybe the red player plays your arrow and the blue player plays your shield. So now you've defeated that one. So it gets pulled off to the side. So flip over your cactus that wants a hug, and maybe you got somebody who yellow player throws out this shield. This one's a special one. It's got 2 shields on it, and your purple player throws that one out. So you've now completed that monster. Flip this one over. You now need to play 1 sword, 1 jump card, and 1 sword. Oh, wait, nope, we already played the sword, sorry. And 1 scroll. There we go. So you can see how kind of hectic this can get as you're playing it. And you're just doing 1 door after another until you get through this whole stack and you're up against the boss monster. Boss monster is a little bit harder. So you're going to want to be able to play your special cards. Like this one counts as a sword and a arrow. We'll get into a little bit more of the special cards as we go along. But you're trying to do this all in 5 minutes and make sure that you have enough cards by the end to be able to go up against the boss. If you ever run into a scenario where you come up against a card that you can't beat, so say you come up against this card, fairly basic card, a gaggle of screaming children, and you require a sword, a shield, and an arrow. And between the 4 players that are currently playing, you cannot play all of these. Say you have your... One person's got this. There, you've got your sword and your arrow on one card, but nobody can play that shield, and nobody has any special cards that allows you to get rid of it. You have lost the game. If this happens on the Baby Barbarian round, you just go back to the beginning of this round. But if it were to happen on, say, the Grime Reaper round, you now have to go back to the Baby Barbarian and beat that level again before you can go make your second attempt at the Grime Reaper. Let's get a little bit into the cards that you have at your disposal. So you have your basic cards that you can use, like your scrolls, your jump cards, your swords, shields, and arrows. But you also have some special cards that you can play. So in the deck, there are cards like this one, which we've seen, which is like 2 shields. You'd have ones where 2 swords as well. You have the ones that count as multiple, like this. This is a sword and an arrow. There's other ones with different combinations on them. And then you also have action cards. The ones that have the specific symbols on them are called resource cards. These are action cards. So these are special cards. You can see they have like they look exactly the same. They're color coordinated based on what deck they came out of. But they're the black with the white in the middle, and they do not have a specific symbol in them. So these are all different. This one comes out of the green deck, and this is a wild card. This can count as any resource. So it doesn't matter what you need. If you have a wild card, you can play it as whatever resource you want it to be. This one's a magic bomb. Magic bomb is able to count as one of every resource. So if you come up against a mini boss, something like this, the collector, this magic bomb kills it in one shot because it only needs one of every symbol. So that magic bomb is really potent, and you want to make sure you have that. That comes out of the blue deck, which of course is the magic deck. You have something, this is another one out of the green deck. This is the healing herbs, depending on where you're from. Choose a player to draw 4 cards from the top of their discard pile. So that's basically the only way you can heal and get cards back into your deck is by playing cards like this. And that allows you to take the top 4 cards of your discard pile, which is the ones that you've had to discard throughout the game, whether to do your special abilities, which we'll get into in a little bit, or if you've had come up against event cards that make you discard cards. Here's one that allows you to cancel an action or an event. These special events are ones that allow you to discard or force you to discard 1 card, maybe your entire hand, sometimes 3 cards, or make you pass to another player. Here's Enrage. This can cause 2 players to draw 3 cards each. That's out of the red deck. The cancel one was out of the blue deck. Backstab. This one allows you to defeat a person immediately. So like this one, this Gaggle of Screaming Children that we were talking about, this is a person card. So if you were to play this, you don't have to play any resource cards and it's already defeated. Divine Shield. This one comes out of the yellow deck for the Paladins and the Valkyrie. This allows you to pause time. This is one of the only abilities in the game that allows you to actually pause the timer. So you can pause it, you can wait until somebody plays a card. It gives you a little bit of a breather, and it allows all players to draw a card. Smite, this one's like Backstab, except it works on monsters. So something specific like this cactus one that we were talking about before is a monster, so you'd be able to do the same thing, just play the Smite on it. This one's out of the yellow deck as well, and this one, choose a player to put their discard pile back on top of their draw pile. That's a really good one because it allows them to put their entire discard pile back on there. Holy Hand Grenade. Probably the best card in the game because it allows you to defeat any card, whether it's a mini boss, whether it's just a regular card that you can't beat. It's a really good card. There's only one of them in the yellow deck. Health Potion. All players draw 3 cards from the discard pile. This one's just like the Backstab or the Smite. Allows you to defeat an obstacle. That one's out of the purple deck. Donation. Give your hand to another player. There is some switching hand mechanics in the game, so you will get some of the cards mixed up. And Steal. Steal another player's hand, add it to your own. This is also a purple card, which is like the thief or the ninja. So, what are you coming up against inside the door deck, you might ask? Let's go through a couple of the things that you're going to be encountering. There are 3 types of basic door cards. Those basics are monsters, obstacles, and people. Or persons, I guess. So that will allow you to interact with them differently based on which characters are in the game. So if you have certain characters that interact with specific type of cards, that would give you options based on whatever card is there. And you see each one of them requires a specific set of resources in order to defeat. So beyond your basic cards, there are also things that you add in outside of just the 20. These are special cards. So like this is a mini boss. You can see it requires significantly more. And these are going to be really hard to come up against sometimes because just you require so many resources. You have to have your hands all set up just right for them. So that's a mini boss. Here's another special card. This one causes all players to discard 3 cards. Normally this will be your entire hand, or if you're playing with only a couple of people, it might be because the amount of cards you have in your hand is based on the amount of people playing. So if you're playing with 3 or more, this is going to be your entire hand. If you're playing with 2 players, then you'll have some cards left over, but it's still a big one having to discard 3 cards. This one causes everybody to discard 1 card. This one requires you to flip 2 dungeon cards. These the basic door cards right here. Whatever the 2 dungeon cards that are here, you have to flip the next 2 and defeat both before moving on. So you have to defeat them both simultaneously. And then this is the pass your hand to another player. So this one you pick another player, you guys decide. Remember, you're on a clock, so you decide who you pass your hand to, and everybody has to do the same thing. So it kind of mixes up the cards, might mess up some strategy. The new player is on the fly having to get used to a new hand. So now let's get into what each of the individual characters is able to do. So based on which player mats you've chosen and which side of each player mat you've chosen, you'll be able to do different things to different cards. So let's look at the one that's not on the board first. So here's the Huntress, and on the other side is the Ranger. The Huntress ability, you can do this as many times as you want. You discard 3 cards to choose another player to draw 4 cards. And on this side, you have the Trick Shot. Discard 3 cards to defeat a person. It's always going to be discarding 3 cards that allows you to do something. Let's look at the Thief. The Thief is discard 3 cards to draw 5 cards. So that's one where you're pickpocketing someone. You're discarding your hand. Maybe it's not helpful, but then you can draw 5 new cards. So you might be able to get those cards that you don't have in your hand currently that you're actually needing. Here's the Ninja. The Ninja is able to vault, which discard 3 cards, and you can defeat an obstacle. Looking at the Paladin. The Paladin can smite, discard 3 cards to defeat a monster. On the other side is discard 3 cards to make everyone else draw 2 cards. And let's look at the magic ones. Here, the Wizard, this is the only other way you can stop the clock. Discard 3 cards to pause time until someone plays a card. So it's just kind of like playing that Divine Shield card, except you can do this whenever you want by discarding 3 cards. On the other side, you have the Sorceress, and that allows you to teleport, which discard 3 cards to defeat an obstacle. And the last one, Gladiator, Intimidate. Discard 3 cards to defeat a person, and discard 3 cards to defeat a monster. So these are both about defeating a specific type of person or a specific type of card. And outside of the special abilities that each player has, they each come with a specific colored deck. And so the red deck, the blue deck, the yellow deck, the purple deck, and the green deck. And each deck has specific types of cards in it. The red deck, for instance, is heavy attack. It has a lot of swords in it, which is, obviously that color. You can see I pull up a sword right there. There's a double sword. So it's very attack heavy. It also has a lot of these cards, or not a lot, but it has enough of these cards where they count as multiple things. The yellow deck is the one that has most of the healing items. It also has that Holy Hand Grenade. Here's a Divine Shield. The Holy Hand Grenade is also really a really good card. You have the green deck. Green deck is really valuable because if somebody's playing the green deck, you're more than likely going to have some of those wild cards. You can see here's 2 wild cards out of these 3 cards right here. And those can be played as any resource. So if you have a decent amount of those, you can just have somebody throwing out wild cards, like to filling in all the holes. You see there's a lot of them right here. So now that you know how to play the game, I'll meet you back up top and I'll tell you about what I think of 5 Minute Dungeon. So now that you know how to play the game, let me discuss a little bit of my thoughts on the game. It is a fun, chaotic time. If once you start that timer, you're just constantly throwing cards. You're flipping over the door cards and you're just playing resource cards. Sometimes multiple players are throwing, hey, I got a shield, I got an arrow. Oh no, we got 3 shields, 3 arrows out on the board, and you kind of have to divvy it up. The timer kind of gets into your head and it eliminates the reasoning and kind of strategic mind that most of us tabletop players have by default, and you're kind of just throwing cards in. You're looking at the symbols, and I hate to say it, it actually detracts a little bit from the fact that the cards are really funny. The artwork on the cards is funny, and the names of them, there's just one that's just a set of stairs, which is hilarious, and there's another one that we talked about in the mechanics, like the singing children, the screaming children, and the 2 guys, 1 bow, and it's just, the artwork's funny. You can really, if you actually slow down and appreciate it, look through the cards, it definitely adds another element to it. That's kind of a great plus for me, is the fact that I really like the art style, I really like the humor, but the best thing that this game has going for it is just that chaotic, fun atmosphere that it generates. You're just kind of constantly going for getting the right cards, and like you're not really handling your hand very well. You're really looking at it as, I got to get things out of my hand as quickly as possible to get through every individual door card, because in a lot of cases you would look at specific cards and you'd be like, this is a really good card, I want to hold on to it. Or like the Holy Hand Grenade. Holy Hand Grenade is probably the best card in the game, but because of the event cards that can make you pass off cards or make you discard cards or make you discard your hand, you can't just sit there and hold on to it the whole game and be like, I'm going to use it against a mini boss. You might have to throw it out against a random wolf that just requires 2 swords, just because all the other players happen to have no swords at that given moment. And that's the kind of chaotic nature of the game. You can never know what card is going to be the one that you're going to lose on. It could be the easiest card in the entire deck, and you can lose on it just because of random chance you guys didn't have the right card at the right moment. And looking at the box and the artwork and kind of the atmosphere that this game generates from a visual perspective, you would not expect a difficult game when you opened it up. You would probably expect a little bit more of a beginner level, maybe up to moderate, more of a younger age kind of game that's a great gateway game. And it is a great gateway game because like younger players will find it fun because of the energy that it generates, but it is a hard game. You can, depending on how the luck comes out, how the door cards play out, and how your hand kind of works throughout the game, you could lose on the Baby Barbarian several times. The first time that we played this game, it took us about 40 minutes to beat the Baby Barbarian for the first time, and that's just, we kept losing. We kept coming up against random cards. A lot of time, I want to say, it was that crab. There's that giant crab mini boss, and we came up against that, I think, 6 or 7 times and lost. But once you do finally beat that first boss, it's like a rush of energy and it's a lot of fun, and you kind of get used to reading the door cards really quickly, reading the resource card requirements, and managing your hand a little bit better, and managing your abilities. Because if you're going to try and play through the game and not use your discard 3 abilities that each player mat has, you're going to end up with a lot of difficulty, because that's a requirement. You're not going to be able to go up against all of the door cards by just playing the regular resource cards. And it can be frustrating at first to try and get to the swing of all the things you have to do, with being able to clear off the board fast enough to turn over the next door card, to be able to manage your hand to the fact that you can really not have a sustained strategy for very long, because you can have to discard your cards or pass your hand off to somebody else or just come up against some wacky, weird scenarios. But once you get past that frustration, it's a really fun, really energetic game. If I were going to rate this game, I would probably give it a 7.5 or an 8, just because it's a really fun experience. If you're just looking for a game that you can bust out with pretty much anybody and have them very quickly work through that frustration that you hit in the beginning, but then end up having a really good time, this is a great game. If you want to pick up your own copy, you're going to see a link down in the description. You can pick it up at no extra cost to you, but it really helps out the channel. And if you really like these game reviews, then let us know in the comments what's been your favorite review that you've seen so far. And hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you're notified of all the reviews that we post in the future. I'll catch you in the next game review, guys.